Good evening, and thank you for coming here tonight. Actually, after David's kind words saying about me, actually, I'm not the most important person here. You are. That's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to listen to you, and I hope that by the end of the evening that you will feel that you have been listened to, you have been heard, and we will take away many of the things that no doubt that you will quiz myself and the constabulary on. I hold these forums every couple of months because it's one thing that local people have always said to me is that they want to have a public forum where they can ask me questions, where they can ask senior police officers without anyone sort of filtering through the questions, any censoring. So feel free to ask us any question that you want. I'm not saying that we will know the answers, but we'll take it away and we will come back to you and let you know the response. So to say Portishead is close to home would be an understatement. Not only do I live locally, but as you know that police headquarters is in Portishead. I was at school in Clevedon, and I think I did an O-level project on the potential development of a potential marina at Portishead. So one that probably shows you how ancient I am. But I obviously know this area very well. First of all, I'd like to talk to you a bit about what an elected police and crime commissioner does, and before we move on to listening to what Daimon has to say. So I've been in post for 2.5 years. I was elected in November 2012. And as you all know, we've had a general election now, which I was watching with bated breath. I am an independent, and it obviously I did not support any individual MP or councillor. I felt that was not the right thing to do for an independent. But obviously I was watching it very closely, because had we had a Labour or a Lib Dem government, then they were going to abolish us. And I hope that by the end of the evening you will feel that, at least with a Conservative government and the fact that we're not being abolished, that in fact that you can see that a police and crime commissioner can do certain things, and I hope to persuade you that that's the case. But why did I decide to stand as an independent candidate? It's obviously totally terrifying to stand for an election without any support, in as much as obviously the party machines that for Labour, Conservative and Lib Dems have a lot of activists in towns and villages, particularly in North Somerset and in Somerset. So when you're going to take on this role as an independent and you don't have those teams, it can be quite challenging. And I had, my husband, my 3 children on good days and dry days, and never very early. And so it was quite amazing that I was elected. And for those of you who did vote for me, thank you very much. And for those of you who didn't, I'll just pretend you all did, okay? But my background is, some of you may know, I was part of a bakery business that had a shop in Portishead. In fact, I used to be the manager of that. I've been a magistrate for 15 years on the family, youth and adult bench. I was on the monitoring board at Bristol Prison, and I was on the police authority that the Police and Crime Commissioner replaced. So you can see I have a really wide interest in the criminal justice system. And so what have I done since November 2012? Well, first of all, let me explain to you that one of the most important things about being a Police and Crime Commissioner is that I'm the bridge between you and the police. I'm here to listen, to understand and drive improvements. But what I am not is that I am not operational. I am not the Chief Constable. I have no command and control over any officer or staff. And that's quite right, because I don't have all the years' experience that someone like Daimon has, over 30 years, and so it's quite right that I should not have that control. But what I do have is a large degree of influence, because I have control of the budget. And for those of you who run a household budget, you know those who hold the purse strings has quite a large degree of influence. So that's how I influence the constabulary. But my job is I appoint the Chief Constable and I hold them to account on your behalf. I set a 5-year police and crime plan based on local priorities. And one of the things that we did when I came into this job is that in the past we have only had one police and crime plan for the whole of Avon and Somerset. And you made it very clear to me that how could different areas need different types of policing. How can policing in Clevedon and Portishead be the same as policing in the middle of Bristol, or for that matter in the middle of Exmoor? So we now have police and crime plans for each local authority area, and we have them here, so if you want to take one away, then please do. I set this plan listening to what you wanted as priorities, and I'll talk about that a bit later. But I also set the police part of the council tax precept. That's always a bit dangerous to be talking about that at the moment, because you've probably just got your bills in the last couple of months. And we live in very difficult times. We've had to find over £46 million savings since the 2010 spending review. And it really didn't matter actually who got in the general election. We correctly anticipated that we will still have to find maybe 46 million, maybe over 50 million over the next 4 or 5 years. And in fact, when the Chancellor of the Exchequer announces that he's going to have an emergency budget, I can tell you that that won't be good news for us either. So in July there will be that, and then there will be a spending review in December. But we have our part to play in as the fact that there is less money for public service, but we are going to be a smaller workforce. In 2010 we were 3,200 officers, we're now about 2,600, 2,700, and we will be smaller again in 4 or 5 years' time. And that is because policing, well, I'll ask you, if you remember the debates that went on before the general election, policing was not part of the debate. We talked about immigration, we talked about the NHS, and we talked about the economy. And there was no issues, there was no comment about the police. Now, on one part of you can say, well, that's good because we must be doing a relatively okay job because no one was that interested. But on the downside of that is the fact that we're not ring-fenced, and therefore whenever the government announces that they're going to put extra money, I mean, you know, I'm delighted that they're going to put £8 billion into the NHS, but the other part of me is saying, oh my God, where are they going to get that money from? And I'm afraid it's going to be from departments and the police such as ourselves. So it's a difficult place to be, and we have to work very smartly, we have to work more effectively, we have to be able to produce our officers with the kit that can work for them so that they can stay out in the communities, but also that we've got to particularly invest in mobile technology, and I think that some of you may comment about why do we switch on speed cameras. Well, that is exactly why. Where we have the technology, we have to continue with that investment. So, listening to what people have to say, if I explain to you that the police authority in the last year had about 250 people who contacted them in their last year, I have more than that over each month, and since I've been here, we've had over 10,000 people who've contacted me. Now, some of the cynics of you will say, I bet they're all complaints. Actually, they're not. A lot of people actually want to give feedback on how to improve their police service. They're not being litigious. They're not after compensation. They're saying, this happened to me. I think you could improve the police service if you do A, B, and C. And it's much easier to write to or contact an identifiable person than a committee of 17. So I think for that alone, I think it's really important that that's why I go out and about and I listen to what local people want. Because I'm committed to listening, not just to the people who know how to lobby people like me, but also to listen to the quiet voices, to the most vulnerable. And I try and spend 1 day a week out in the community just listening to those organisations and residents that make up the local area. So yesterday I was talking to a group of people that were homeless, and I moved on to talking to ex-offenders, then to a housing association about how we could tackle antisocial behaviour. then with a group of local councillors who were talking about a local project that we had put some money into about some local CCTV, and then finished the day meeting with a senior health consultant about child sexual exploitation. So you can see it's a very wide remit that a police and crime commissioner can do. But working together, we can do much more. Policing is too big a job just for the police alone, and what we have to do is involve active citizens, so people such as yourself, whether that's on community speed watch, whether that's neighbourhood watch, whether that's independent custody visitors going in and checking what our police cells are looking like and checking with the people in them, whether that's an independent residents panel coming in and looking how people are dealing with complaints, because I want you to be very much aware that it is not my police service, it is not the Chief Constable or Daimon's, but it is yours. You pay for it, and it is very much a service. So if we looked briefly at the priorities in the police and crime plan, it was antisocial behaviour. I very rarely went to a meeting where tackling antisocial behaviour was not raised. Tackling burglary, domestic and sexual violence, and putting victims at the heart of everything we do. And since relaunching the police and crime plan this year, road safety has been added as a 5th priority. And I've understood, I was a bit late coming to this, I fully apologise for that, but a significant proportion of my mailbag has been from local people saying that road safety is really important to you. And it can mean different things to different people. It can mean speeding, it can mean inconsiderate parking, it can mean cycling on pavements, it can mean cycling without lights when it's dark, a whole range of things. But it's been clear to me that it is really important to you. And in fact, I attended the folk hall in Portishead last week, and it was pretty obvious of the concerns that were raised there. And one of the issues that you asked me to do was to raise those concerns with Nigel Ashton, and I have written to him on your behalf. So those are the objectives of the police and crime plan. And I just briefly want to say one of the things also going out is that I realise that our communities do an awful lot with very little recognition. And so I introduced what we call the Commissioner's Pride Award for those who want someone in their community to be publicly recognised. We have some people who are quite outstanding in keeping their communities together. They're always the usual suspects. They're always the ones who volunteer to do A, B, C, D, and all the way through the alphabet. And it's a way of us being able to recognise someone. So if you know of anyone, then please nominate them, because they are the real gel of our communities. That's what keeps our communities really robust and resilient. We also have an action fund. Again, listening to local people, it was very clear that you had amazing ideas. You had some really creative ideas about how to tackle some of the priorities. And so we have put some money aside into an action fund, and we have grants available up to £5,000, which any group of residents can apply for and be able to do a project that all for want of a small amount of money. I know 5,000 is a lot of money, but in the big schemes, it's something that you can deliver. And we've been able to do a whole range of things. As I say, yesterday I was where we've given some money to CCTV on a particularly war memorial that keeps being defaced, and a playground in West Somerset that gets quite constantly abused, and they've been able to use some money to set up in there. And then of course we also have some really weird ideas, in as much as St Andrew's Park came to me and said that why don't you invest in wildflowers? And I thought, gosh, where does that fit in with a police and crime plan? But it was a park that had been previously dominated by a group of drinkers and substance misusers, and by making a wild meadow park, flower meadow in this park, it then got taken over by families and by young children, and all of a sudden the antisocial behaviour plummeted. What a great idea! I wouldn't have thought of that, but people on the ground thought of that, and it has really worked. We're also working very closely, because of the savings we're having to find, we're also working very closely with Wiltshire Constabulary and looking at ways of sharing specialist police resources and back office. Because I'm determined to do everything we can to keep as much of our resources into keeping as many officers, PCSOs and staff on the ground, because that is what you've asked for. So over the next year, there are 3 areas that I want to concentrate: accessibility, visibility and civility. So accessibility, the police will continue to be there at a time and place convenient for you, whether that's on the phone, whether that's online, whether that's through a mobile surgery, whether that's going into some of our local authorities where we've co-located, but making it a different way for you to be able to speak to officers as and when it suits you. We also visibility. It is very clear that with a smaller, with less money, I can't put more people on the ground. When 80% of the budget is spent on salaries and we are going to take another 20% cut, then it makes absolute sense that we're not going to be able to increase the number of police officers and PCSOs, and in fact we will get smaller. So what we've got to do is make those that we have as accessible, as visible as possible, and that's one of the things I'll be working with in the constabulary. And then we come to civility. The vast majority of police officers and staff are incredibly professional. I have to say that as a Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon and Somerset Constabulary, I'm extremely proud of our officers, PCSOs and staff. And it's no more than you deserve, but if you feel that your expectation, your interaction with the police does not come up to what you expect, then I'd like to have that feedback, because it's only by listening to our communities that we have a better chance of getting it right first time, every time. So that's a brief canter of what I do as a Police and Crime Commissioner. Very definitely not operational, but we're now going to pass you over to Daimon, who is very operational, as Area Commander for North Somerset. So, Daimon.